This episode is on 6 tips to influence up and advocate for yourself so you can get promoted and attract other opportunities. I have gotten myself promoted and or created new positions for myself a number of times over the years. And these 6 tips have helped me tremendously, and I hope they help you too. The goal here is to be as practical as possible and ultimately it's a lot of people don't talk about influencing up. We talk about managing up, and it's really similar. But influencing up is really about being savvy and strategic in the way that you interact with your boss and other people and other stakeholders in the company where you work. And it's really a critical skill. We have to be intentional about it if we want to be more visible for a new role or promotion or any opportunity. So let's talk about these 6 tips. First one is build credibility with consistent excellence. This is truly critical. A lot of times we don't think about our consistency as a leader, and yet it is how people are taking us in. They are determining, is this person reliable? And frankly, can I depend on them? And sometimes they might not even realize that, well, in some ways, let's hope they realize that you exist, especially if there's somebody that you're reporting to. But I also want to say that in influencing up, we're talking about anybody that you might have a touch point with. Perhaps you want to get more visibility to have a greater project at work. And the key is here, you want to be known as somebody that is reliable as well as valuable. So the way to do that is, of course, those consistent results and being thinking about how leaders will trust you and trust your work quality and judgment. When they do that, they're going to be obviously more likely to consider your ideas and recommendations. So really important that you recognize you have specialized knowledge or frontline insights that leadership lacks. And sharing these perspectives confidently will make a really nice difference for you. So I remember when I was in a corporate role, specifically head of delivery, program delivery for the company. And that was not a job that I came to right away. And that's important to let people know because I started as a corporate trainer working just a part-time job there. And the more I did it, the more again, I was consistent in my excellence around delivery, making sure that I showed up for the clients. I was always there early and stayed late and showed my commitment to the clients and what their needs were. And then a natural progression, I knew that I wanted to do more. And I remember bringing that forward to my boss, and she was really excited because she said, "Oh, that's awesome." She didn't know that I was actually interested in that. So it really was on me to bring that up. And so having that foundation of delivering with excellence, doing things consistently is really important. And a lot of times, again, I want to remind you that you want to think strategically about all of this. And remember that just going to work and doing your thing at work is all fine and good, but you've got to be thinking about who's noticing me? Who could I get in front of? Where could I initiate some conversations with people that would help you to get more exposure? So basically, that's our number one. Build credibility with consistent excellence. And then number two is you've got to understand your leader's priorities and their pressures. I remember some similar, you may have heard me say this before if you've heard me in the past, but my boss used to say, make it impossible for me to say no. And what she meant by that was she goes, a lot of people come with ideas and they want to do this thing or that thing, but they don't come with a solution. They just come with, I want to move up or I want to advance or I want a new project or something like that. And she said, if you come with what you want and also a plan or proposal for how to do things differently, it makes my life a lot easier. And I can now also say, after many years of being a boss, it is huge when somebody says, hey, I have this idea and here's how I would implement it. And when it makes sense to the company, there's value in it, you look more valuable because we go, oh, that person, oh, yes, she always has great ideas. He always has these amazing suggestions, and he comes along with how to solve it. So, one of the things you can do is take time to learn what matters most to decision makers that are above you. What are their goals? What are their challenges? And what are they evaluated on? That's another thing, too. We can often get really fixated on our own world and our own life, which is a natural human tendency, of course. But thinking about what actually matters. Like if you think about maybe your boss is the head of marketing or the president of a company, and when we know that they have these pressures from external clients, from board members, whatever it might be, taking the time to figure that out will then help you to problem solve in advance and think about this because remembering many years ago when I was an HR manager and I really wanted to create a training department within the company where I worked. And what that meant was really diving into going, okay, how can I convince my boss that this is a good idea? Especially because she was the CFO and she was very concerned about the money. Of course, that was her job. And so being able to understand that we're going back to your leader's priorities and pressures, knowing that the pressure was for her to make sure that the company was running smoothly with the finances. So what I did is I figured out strategically how me starting a training department in the company would benefit and actually save money and help her with her role, make it easier. Things would There'd be more desire for people to work there. There's more retention. There's a lot of things that would help people would be more efficient because they would be getting training in certain areas that they hadn't been trained before. So that was an example. And so the other thing to say here is to frame your proposals in terms of these priorities so that you show, hey, I'm aligned with your objective. I get it. I understand. So that empathy is really, really important. Number three is to present solutions, not just problems, similar to what we already talked about. But when raising issues, come prepared, have thoughtful recommendation, and have a plan. And it is really amazing how appreciative we are when somebody comes with this idea rather than just escalating issues. And in fact, there's a company that I'm going to be working with soon who said they have so many of their employees that come to them with all of these issues, but they don't come with a solution. So immediately, and these are not junior level people, folks. These are people that are should know better about that. And yet, I understand it can be hard sometimes because we are just trying to get through our day, trying to deal with our immediate priorities that are right in front of us. But it goes back to what is your why? If you want to move up and you want to advance, then you've got to be really intentional about how you want to show up and how you want people to experience you. Because the truth is, we all have a reputation. We just don't know what it is most of the time. People are talking about us without us even realizing it. And so you're not going to be in every single room. So you want to make sure that you are being talked about in a way that is very positive and that you are a problem solver. That's one of the best lessons that I've learned from a coach over the years, which is to be a problem solver. Don't be the one that comes and whines about something or that's always complaining, but think about, hey, here's what we can do about this. This is also a very good question for those of you that have people in your lives. It could be personal, it could be professional. When there's excessive complaining, a great question is, what can you do about it? Or if you're on the same team, what can we do? That will help to move them outside of that blame game, shall we say. Number four is to communicate strategically. Frame your ideas in terms of organizational goals and leadership priorities. Think about, again, what is it that the organization is doing, and how can you tailor what you need and want to them? So tailoring your message to your audience's communication style as well is really, really good. So some people really prefer, give me the data, give me the information. Some people are much more analytical. Well, to give somebody wanting data could also be analytical, but knowing what people are going to respond to best. Take some time to do your research. Figure out, are they more like, do they like the story? Do they like the big picture? Do they like the data? And all of that is really key. And then, especially key related to communication, is to be concise. Focus on the impact that you want to make and anticipate questions that they might have or concerns that they have. And here's another really good question. When you are in the conversation and somebody says no, this could be your boss, this could be a team member, this could also be a client for those of you that are entrepreneurs, then the the best question that we can ask here is, what concerns do you have? If you say that after they say no, that shows, hey, I want to learn. I want to understand. That shows curiosity. And when we show curiosity and care, of course, as part of that, then, and we're sincerely asking that question, then we're going to get some information that might help us, that might actually be the actual issue. It's really, maybe they're just saying no because that's their knee-jerk reaction. And if we can really focus on what their issues are and then help solve those, of course, if you can get that dialogue going, then you're going to come across as a lot more credible. Okay, number 5 is to, oh, let me go back for a minute on communicating strategically. Around being concise, I love the phrase, be brief, be bright, be gone. Then you just keep that in mind and have your point right up front. There's a wonderful term called bluff from the US military. Bottom line up front. State this in your emails, put it in the subject line, the first line of your email, or just um, have it where at the beginning of the paragraph in the email you would say something like, here's my conclusion with the project, or here's what we really came to in the end. If you'd like more detail on how we arrived there or how I arrived at that decision, feel free to read the rest of this email. All of the details are below. That way you give them an option. A lot of people think that they have to make a case before they make the main point. But that's not actually how people take in information. They take it in the opposite way. They take it with, what's the bottom line? What's the big picture? And then all the details can follow. Because if you just start spouting details at people, there's not often a context for those details. So that will help you to influence so that people want to keep listening to you. And really keeping in mind the time, also what not to say. This was definitely something I've been very cautious of and conscious of over the years, to not say more than I need to say. Think, okay, what does this person have time for? I've also learned a hard lesson. I remember years ago where I used to actually, I remember one time really processing some emotions in an email to my boss, and I thought, you know what? Later I thought, she didn't need to see all that or read all that. You want to be discerning about how much information you're giving, not just in that case the inappropriate information, but just information, period. Because we all know the term TDLR, too long, or TLDR, too long didn't read. If we have too much information, either verbally or in an email, people might just say, they might tune out because it's too long or we're not focused, so they're having a hard time staying with us. And as one of my mentors, Donald Miller, says, if they have to burn too many calories to figure out what you're trying to say, you're going to lose them and they will tune out. Number 5 is to build genuine relationships before you need them. Oh my gosh, this is such an important thing. When you do any networking, whether you're at an event or whether you are simply getting to know people in the organization, number 1, this is a fabulous idea. If you are new in an organization or somebody new joins the company, Take them to lunch or say, hey, do you want to get together? I'd love to get to know you better. These are very strategic things. Having a big and it doesn't even have to be big, but having a network that where people really know you, they like you, they trust you. There is nothing better than that on a professional level because those are the people that are going to potentially help you find jobs in the future. They're going to give you business deals. They're going to connect you to people that could become clients, or they're going to connect you just in general to get to know some people better, and maybe you'll even have some new friends out of it. But we often forget this because we're so busy in our day to day. But you've got to be strategic. Set a goal once a week to spend 15 minutes a day on LinkedIn, or even once a week, you're going to spend 30 minutes on LinkedIn responding to messages. If that feels too much for you, start with one person a week. Who could you connect to once a week, either on LinkedIn or simply asking somebody, hey, would you do an introduction? I just want to build my network and get to know more people. There's nothing wrong with that. And that is almost 100% of how I've gotten any clients, any speaking engagements. So many things have come because of people that I've known. And that goes back to our number one tip is around doing things with excellence and being consistent. Because if you show that and people, when they think of you, you want them to be thinking, oh, wow, that person's great. They're reliable. They're so good at what they do. They're the ultimate professional and they're fun and genuine. So this also reminds me, don't be afraid to let people get to know you personally. Sometimes when people hold back about their personal situation or their lives, it makes it harder to get to know them. And then when we don't feel like we know people, it takes away a little bit of the trust, I guess. I'm trying to find the right word for it. But I did know a president of a company years back whose marketing manager used to say it's really hard because if the president were more willing to show their personality out in the world, this the marketing manager said, I think we'd get a lot more business. So it's too bad that that person never did that. But the more we can have these thoughtful interactions with people, demonstrate value, and identify and nurture relationships so that with especially with influential stakeholders. So if you get to know people in the company, they can champion your ideas. Allison Forgale, the author of Likeable Badass, shares an example in her book about how when she started working somewhere, I think it was, I don't want to misquote, but I think she was interning or doing something at Stanford, and she said that the she really wanted to just get to work. And in her mind, work was sitting down at the computer doing research or really focusing on the job. And the professor that had hired her, I think for the first 2 weeks, just said, just go around and talk to people. And Allison was going, wait, what about the work here? And it was such a great example of how that, she didn't know at the time how important that was going to be for her. Because then later, when she needed to move forward, needed to move out around in her roles, and I can't remember the exact situation, but the point is here that she had built these relationships, but she wouldn't have done it herself if she wasn't basically required to get to know people. So really key to build those relationships. And it's it's really great when you can connect with leaders personally. So don't be afraid to be a little vulnerable. You want to be professionally vulnerable, of course, but don't be afraid to share things about your life and your preferences and things like where you love to go on vacation or what you like to do in your free time. So all of that can help people get to know you. And when you're a little bit vulnerable, people tend to be vulnerable back. So isn't that a really cool thing? And then our sixth is to show your emotional intelligence. Too often we are not as good at that. We are focused on the job, we're focused on the task at hand, and sometimes we forget about things like reading the room, reading the organizational climate or cultural climate, deciding when is it a good idea to press forward with your idea and when is it a time to potentially hold back, hold off. Timing is everything. Know what's going on, and especially you do not want to go to your boss or go to somebody that's a critical stakeholder when they are in the middle of something, super busy. And this actually reminds me of a mistake I made a number of years ago where I was asked to be on the leadership team at my last company. And I was really excited about that. I had been a senior manager for years, and most of the people on the leadership team were director or above. So I'm asking, okay, so what does this mean for me? And my boss said, oh, yeah, we'll have to figure that out. Well, by the time almost 9 months later came by, I was already doing the work on the leadership team, which, by the way, I would never recommend you take more responsibility on without having a deliberate conversation about your future, about what this means, about getting promoted or making more money, whatever it is that you want. I, at the time, did not feel comfortable asking. I think it really comes down to me not feeling valuable or worthy enough to set up a specific time with her. I think I was also afraid that she was going to say no, and I didn't want to hear no. So at the time, it felt easier to ignore it, which in hindsight doesn't make any sense to me now. But come review time, she says something's off because I was shocked that I hadn't been promoted. And then she asked me, well, what's wrong? And that's when I told her, and I said, well, I had already asked you about this. And she said, really? I don't even remember you asking me about this, Karen. And she was very sincere. And then I was so embarrassed. And I said, okay, let's do a rewind. I want a promotion. I want a new title. And I'd like to know if you would support me. And if you don't support me, I'd like to know why and what I can do about it. And we set a timeline. And what a difference. What a difference that would have been. That would have really that that would have made all the difference. But nonetheless, I learned from it and I'm telling you about it today. So hopefully you can learn from my mistake. And the other thing with emotional intelligence is to show empathy for the pressures that people are facing, but also maintain conviction in the things that you're contributing, which are very valuable. If we can do that and hold both of those in the same space, that will help us to continue moving onward and upward. So let's review these 6 things to help you influence up so you can get promoted and have more opportunities. First one is build credibility with consistent excellence, so you're known for that. Number 2, understand your leader's priorities and pressures. Number 3, present solutions, not just problems. Number 4, communicate strategically. 5, build genuine relationships before you need them. And number 6, demonstrate emotional intelligence. If you try out these things, or at least try one of them in the next week and see how that goes. These are also things that we work on in my monthly membership for executive women called the Powerhouse. If that sounds interesting to you and you'd like to speak with more power, speak with more authority, negotiate bigger deals, be seen as an influential leader, and have more confidence in any situation, whether it's board presentations or large stages or simply influencing somebody in a meeting one-on-one. If any of those things if you want to get better at any of those things related to your communication, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. And I always appreciate learning what you're getting out of these podcasts because I would love to hear from you. What is working? What suggestions do you have? And topics. If you have any suggestions for topics and what you need, that would be amazing.